G'day guys and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different from my usual in the field type video because we're here to talk about memory cards. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about the CF Express Type A cards. With the arrival of some of Sony's new camera models has come the need for faster memory cards in order to unlock some of the shooting features such as the 30 frames per second you can get on the Sony A1. Now, for better or worse, Sony elected to overcome this problem by reinventing the wheel. And instead of using existing technology, they invested in the CF Express Type A format. Admittedly, this does have some advantages in that the card slots on these newer cameras are both SD and Type A compatible, which gives the user some flexibility in terms of the memory cards that they wish to use. One of the main issues with the initial release of the Type A cards was that Sony were the only manufacturers, which meant that they had a monopoly on the market and could essentially charge whatever they wanted. This meant that the cards were pretty pricey and out of reach for many users. Fortunately, there are a whole host of third-party manufacturers which are now producing the Type A cards, which means that there is more competition and ultimately that's better for the consumer. One of these third-party companies is Exosend, and they'll be the cards that I'm talking about today. Now, for full disclosure, Exosend have sent me a couple of cards as well as a card reader to review, but I'm not being paid for this opinion and I'm free to say whatever I want. Superficially, these cards look and feel very similar to the Sony cards that I typically use. However, on a per gigabyte basis, they are much cheaper than the Sony cards, and in fact, they're one of the cheaper manufacturers going around. But how does that translate to performance? Well, by no means am I going to perform an in-depth scientific test, because that's not really my bag on this channel. But what I'm going to focus on with these cards is looking at how they perform for the things that matter the most to me when I'm shooting. And that is, how many shots can I take on my Sony A1 before the buffer is full? How long does it take this buffer to clear? And how long does it take for me to transfer images from the card onto my computer? For all of these tests, I'm going to be comparing my Sony cards with the Exosend cards. And I'm going to be shooting them in the same way that I'll be shooting out in the field when I'm getting photos. That is, I will be shooting in lossless compressed large RAW format. I'll be shooting on high plus continuous shooting, and I'll be recording to a single card. Alright, so I've just headed outside to run a few of these tests. Incidentally, I have chosen the worst day possible to make this review. I do apologise if it comes through on the video. It is horrendous out here. Nonetheless, we'll press on. So all I've done is I've set up how I would normally set up in the field when I'm taking photographs. So I have my camera sitting on a tripod and the gimbal head. I have my Region Honeyeater in the tree there ready to be photographed. And all we're going to do now is fire off a series of bursts and look how long it takes to fill the buffer and then clear the buffer on each of these cards. Alright, let's roll. Okay, so the first card we'll try is the Exosend card. Okay, we've hit the buffer there. Okay, now we'll try the Sony card. So we've only just started to hit the buffer limit there. Alright, I've retreated to the relative safety of indoors after that blustering, horrible hurricane that was outside. So the plan now is to test how long it takes to transfer the files from the cards onto an external drive. So my normal workflow when I get home from a photo shoot is to immediately transfer all my photos onto external disks. I don't use the hard drive on the computer because it just takes up too much space. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transfer 1,000 photos from each card onto an external drive and just time how long that takes. One final test I'm going to do is I'm going to run each card through a speed tester to see exactly what sort of write and read speeds we're getting on each card. So you can see on this speed test, the actual write and read speeds for the Sony card are slightly faster than the XSN card. Alright, there you have it. That's the XSN CF Express Type A cards for you. Now when you compare them to the Sony version, there are some slight differences in that it does take a little bit longer to clear the buffer when the buffer's full. It takes a little bit longer to write files to an external hard drive, and in the head-to-head speed test, the XSN cards are slightly slower than the Sony version. In saying that, these differences are likely to be offset by the far greater value for money you get with the XSN cards in comparison to the Sony ones. And to be honest, the general person who's out there as a hobbyist shooting in the field probably isn't really going to notice these differences anyway. In addition, regardless of the brand of CF Express Type A card that you use, I think it's always going to be a better proposition than any of the SD cards that are out there, and it will help you to maximize the potential that you can get when using some of the high-end cameras like the Sony A1. Well, I really hope you enjoyed hearing about one of the sort of lesser known card manufacturer brands that are out there, and it's given you something to think about when you make your next purchase. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you back on the channel very soon.